Most people miss out on real wealth because they only understand money on a physical level. They think wealth is just the amount sitting in their account, the payments coming in, or the things they can hold, spend, show off, or prove to others. And yes, wealth can absolutely include money. But if you only see it that way, you completely miss the deeper part of what's actually moving through it. Spiritually, money is not nearly as simple as most people believe. It carries a completely different meaning. And if you're someone who's spiritually attuned, you probably already have a sense of what that is. Because once you truly understand the spiritual meaning of money, the whole idea of abundance will never look the same again. Money is not just paper, numbers on a screen, or something people chase because they want comfort or security. Money is movement. It is human effort turned into something that can travel freely. It is attention made visible. It represents hours of work, sacrifice, discipline, and real value, all compressed into a form that can pass from one hand to another. That's exactly why money becomes dangerous when someone sees it only as power. Because money doesn't make a person spiritual or unspiritual. It simply reveals what was already moving inside them. In greedy hands, money turns into noise. It becomes ego. It becomes control. It becomes a way to feel bigger while the soul stays empty. But in clean hands, money becomes medicine. It builds things. It feeds people. It takes heavy pressure off a family. This is the spiritual essence of money that most people never understand. Money is not the final destination. It is a tool, and the universe does not trust everyone with powerful tools, because a tool in the wrong hands can destroy everything it was meant to build. It flows toward the person who understands that wealth is not here to make them superior. One of the clearest signs that wealth was written into your path may have started long before you even knew what money really was. It began in the way you felt things so deeply, the way you noticed pain in people before they said a single word, the way you cared even when it would have been much easier not to care at all. If you've always had an empath soul, if you've always been the person who could sense the heavy energy in a room, understand what others were hiding behind their smiles, or give love even when you were completely exhausted, that was not weakness, that was training. Most people don't understand how incredibly valuable that is, because the world teaches you to admire the loudest person, the coldest person, the one who can take without feeling anything. But spiritually, empathy is one of the rarest and most powerful forms of intelligence. It allows you to truly understand need. It allows you to create from a place of real compassion. It allows you to see what people are missing, what they're afraid of, and what they're silently praying for. And that kind of deep awareness can become a direct doorway to wealth. Because every true form of wealth is connected to solving something meaningful for someone else. Being an empath is not easy. It means you feel more, carry more, notice more, and sometimes suffer more because your heart simply won't let you walk through life blind. But that is exactly why the universe can trust certain souls with abundance, because someone has to do the work of building without destroying. Someone has to hold resources without becoming cruel. Someone has to receive more and still remember the people who have less. Wealth does not always go to the one who wants to own the world. Sometimes it goes to the one who still has enough heart left to heal a piece of it. And when money begins to move toward a person like that, it is not just a reward. It is a responsibility. It is the universe saying, I know what this will become in your hands. I know you will use it to lift, to protect, to build, and to give back in ways that only someone with a deep heart would even think about. One of the most overlooked signs that wealth is getting closer is that you stop looking at money the same way. Not because you suddenly stop wanting it, and not because you pretend you're above it, but because something inside you begins to mature around it. You stop seeing money as this magical finish line where all your problems will disappear. Instead, you start seeing it more like a current, something that moves, something that carries intention, something that can either build life or expose what was already broken inside a person. Because money is never just money. Money is choice. Money is protection. Money is the ability to take an idea that only existed in your mind and give it a real body in the world. And when the universe is preparing someone for wealth, it starts changing the way they relate to that current. They no longer want money just to look powerful. They start thinking about what it could repair, who it could help, what it could create, and what kind of pressure it could finally remove from the people they love. That is when wealth consciousness becomes real. It is the quiet realization that abundance in the right hands can feed families, restore dignity, fund dreams, protect peace, and completely change the direction of an entire bloodline. Think about that for a moment. One person, one shift in consciousness, one life that finally moves with intention instead of reaction. And entire generations after that person are born into a completely different reality. That is the weight of what we're actually talking about when we talk about real wealth. This is not about buying things. This is about building a life that echoes forward. When abundance is getting closer, you stop fantasizing about people watching you win. And that might sound small, but it's actually huge. Because for a long time, many people don't just want success. They want witnesses. They want the people who doubted them to finally see. They want the old friends, the old enemies, the old version of themselves, and everyone who ignored them to turn around and realize they were wrong. But then something shifts quietly, without you forcing it. You stop needing the reaction. You stop building your future around an imaginary audience. You stop picturing how people will look at you when you finally have the house, the money, the freedom, the peace, and the proof. Your goals become quieter, more private, more sacred. Not because they became smaller, but because they finally became real. And this is a sign most people miss, because the ego believes success has to be seen to be valid. But spiritually, the universe sometimes delays wealth until your identity is no longer dependent on being seen as wealthy. Because if abundance comes too early, it doesn't become freedom. It becomes performance. It becomes another costume for the same old insecurity. Wealth that still needs applause is not real wealth yet. It is hunger wearing expensive clothes. So when you stop needing to prove yourself, don't think you've lost ambition. You may have finally purified it. You may have finally reached the point where you want the blessing for what it can build, not for who it can impress. And that is powerful, because the universe can trust a private person with public blessings. It can trust someone who no longer needs to turn every breakthrough into a stage. When your success no longer needs an audience, it becomes much harder for the world to control what you do with it. Before material wealth shows up, something strange happens to your attention. You start guarding it differently. Things that used to entertain you begin to feel expensive. The pointless drama, the constant comparison, the random opinions, the endless noise, the conversations that go nowhere, and the people who only come around to drain your spirit. Suddenly, all of it starts costing too much. Even if no money is actually leaving your hand, that is because attention is one of the most hidden and powerful currencies in your life. Wherever your attention goes, your energy follows. Wherever your energy goes, your decisions follow. And wherever your decisions go, your future eventually follows. So if something owns your attention long enough, it doesn't just distract you, it starts shaping the life you're walking into. This is why before wealth comes, you may become unexpectedly selective. You may not be able to scroll the same way, listen to the same complaints, entertain the same arguments, or keep feeding the same inner chaos. Not because you became boring or think you're better than anyone, but because your inner world starts feeling truly valuable. Maybe wealth begins when you stop spending your inner world like loose change. And once that shift happens, your whole life starts rearranging itself. You begin to understand that not everything deserves access to your mind. Not every opinion deserves a seat in your spirit. Not every distraction deserves the power to pull you away from what is being built inside you. You start choosing silence over noise, depth over surface, progress over performance. And that is not isolation, that is preparation. There is a strange grief that comes before wealth, and almost nobody talks about it. It doesn't feel like grief at first. It feels more like confusion, or distance, or a quiet restlessness you can't explain. But what's actually happening is that the old version of you is dissolving. The person who needed the validation, who stayed in the wrong rooms, who played small to keep other people comfortable, who ran from stillness because stillness made the emptiness too loud, that person is leaving. And sometimes that feels like loss before it feels like freedom. Old friendships begin to feel hollow. Environments you used to thrive in start feeling suffocating. Habits you relied on for years suddenly stop working. The version of yourself that got you here can't get you to where you're going. And the universe, in its strange and occasionally brutal wisdom, starts removing what no longer fits before it adds what is meant for you. This is a sign, not a sign that something is wrong, a sign that something new is being prepared. Chrysalises are not comfortable. Becoming is not painless. But if you are in that space right now, if you feel like you are between who you were and who you are becoming, do not mistake the discomfort for failure. That feeling is construction. That feeling is the universe clearing space. Something else starts happening when wealth is approaching. Coincidences pile up in ways that feel too precise to be accidents. You think of a person, and they call. You think of an idea, and suddenly you find an article, a book, a conversation that validates it from a direction you never expected. Doors open that you never knocked on. Opportunities arrive, dressed as ordinary moments. Most people dismiss this as luck. But spiritually attuned people feel it differently. They feel the texture of it. The way these moments seem to rhyme with something they were already building inside themselves. As if the external world is finally starting to mirror what they've been cultivating internally. This is not magic in the superstitious sense. This is alignment. This is what happens when a person's inner frequency finally starts matching the frequency of what they've been asking for. When your thoughts, your actions, your identity, and your direction all start pointing the same way, the world starts responding. Not because it's magic, but because focused energy is simply more powerful than scattered energy. And when your life is finally oriented around something real, things that were always available start becoming visible. Watch for these moments. Write them down, not because they're proof of anything, but because noticing them trains your mind to stay open. And an open mind receives more than a closed one, always. One of the quietest and most powerful signs that abundance is forming inside you is when you stop running from yourself. When solitude stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like home. When sitting alone with your thoughts, your plans, your vision, your silence stops being something you dread and starts being something you protect. For many people, stillness is terrifying. It is where all the unprocessed noise lives. The regrets, the fears, the questions without answers, the grief they've been outrunning for years. So they fill every moment. They stay busy not because they have things to do, but because staying busy means not having to sit with what they haven't yet faced. But before wealth comes, real, lasting, soulful wealth, there is usually a season of deep inner reckoning, a period where you meet yourself honestly, where you face the stories you've been telling yourself about who you are and what you're worth, where you stop hiding behind motion and let the stillness teach you something. Because here's the thing about people who build lasting wealth. They are not running from themselves. They are deeply acquainted with themselves. They know what they want and why. They know what they fear and how to move through it anyway. They know the difference between a decision made from clarity and a decision made from panic. That kind of self-knowledge doesn't come from constant noise. It comes from the willingness to be still long enough to hear it. When solitude stops feeling empty and starts feeling full, you are becoming someone the universe can trust with more. These signs are not a checklist. You will not wake up one morning having completed all of them and find money sitting at your door. That is not how this works. But what these signs point to is a transformation, a deep, slow, often uncomfortable rewiring of who you are and what you believe you deserve, and what you are willing to become in order to receive it.